So, hello everyone, and welcome to our special session for strategy and investing for impact with three of our wonderful guest speakers. Jessie Coates, who's an alum from our INSEAD Social Entrepreneurship program. Katya Akulinicheva from our MBA program from 2015, and Lisa Wei from MBA 2017. So the format we have in mind is that they're going to give very brief presentations about their work, just 7-8 minutes each. Then I'll ask them just 1 or 2 questions each, and then we are going to leave the last 20-25 minutes for open questions that anybody else wants to have. Just a reminder and a request again, if you can please keep your cameras on because it's just nicer for the speakers. With that, let me see how I unshare my screen. Oh, I didn't have it shared anymore. Okay, perfect. Okay, good. So we can get started. Jessie, please, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessie. Let me see if I can just share my screen.
Yep.
Let me know when you can see it. Perfect. So yeah, it's great to be here and to speak to you all. And it looks like we're a small but perfectly formed group. I'm still amazed that that we have anyone turning up on an optional session on a Friday evening. So thank you very much. As Jessie shared, my name's Jessie, Jessie Coates, and I'm the Global Impact Entrepreneurship Leader at EY, which means that I have the privilege of leading EY's work globally to support social entrepreneurs or impact entrepreneurs as we talk about them. I'm also an alumni of the INSEAD Social Entrepreneurship Program from 2017, as Jasdeep shared. And I suspect you're quite familiar with EY, but for those of you that are maybe less familiar with us, we're one of the world's leading global professional services firms. We have over 300,000 employees and we have offices in over 150 countries. And our purpose is to build a better working world. And we traditionally do that by supporting the world's largest multinational corporations and government departments to help them overcome their biggest challenges. And my role at EY is really to lead the work to extend those services to incredible impact startups to help them scale new technologies and business models that are using the power of the market to tackle the world's toughest social and environmental challenges. So over the last 5 years, my team and I have been building a portfolio of products and services, which we've designed to support impact enterprises at different stages of their growth journey and enable different levels of engagement. So that includes very intensive one-on-one full-time consulting projects through to group-based skills development and coaching programs, as well as digital tools and resources, which we've built to be freely available and highly scalable to impact entrepreneurs all around the world. And when I first began this journey 5 years ago, we delivered a relatively small number of full-time consulting projects each year with impact enterprises around the world. And that model still continues to form the core of our portfolio because it really represents the most immersive and most impactful way that EY can really support these incredible entrepreneurs. And these projects typically involve EY teams working full-time with pioneering impact businesses around the world on bespoke scopes of work for a nominal not-for-profit fee of $75 per working day. But over the last few years, we've been able to scale that up to deliver now over 500 consulting projects with impact enterprises in over 60 countries. And we've now also served thousands more entrepreneurs through this wider suite of services, helping them to indirectly benefit over 30 million people around the world. And obviously we haven't been able to achieve that scale alone. And a key part of our strategy is collaborating with leading players in this space where our services can be complementary to theirs. So for example, we partner with a lot of impact investors where they provide the subsidized finance to impact businesses and we provide the subsidized business support. And we also partner with many of our largest EY commercial clients, so typically multinational corporations who are also very interested in this space. Now obviously it costs money to do this work. So one of the key things that has really enabled us to scale this is the fact that this is what I would describe as a shared value program. So of course, the primary reason we do it is to create social impact by creating value for these impact enterprises that we serve. But it's also been designed to create value for our EY people who regularly describe these opportunities to work with these incredible impact startups as the highlight of their EY career. And it also creates value for our commercial EY clients by unlocking insights about new social and disruptive innovation trends, and by partnering with them to help achieve social impact ambitions. And just to bring this to life, I wanted to quickly share the example of one consulting project that we delivered recently with GEON, which is an impact enterprise focused on improving the quality of healthcare for the 100 million or so people who live in rural Bangladesh. And so often the only healthcare outposts that these people have access to is micro-pharmacies, but the quality of products and services can be highly variable in these contexts. So GEON is a business which connects thousands of these micro-pharmacies through its GEON Connect digital platform and provides training and technology as well as access to high-quality health products and services to the micro-pharmacists, and already helps 4 million underserved patients in this way. Now, Unilever, the FMCG giant, is actually testing a small partnership with GEON in Bangladesh to see if they can use GEON's network of micro-pharmacies to distribute Unilever health products to the rural communities that they serve on an affordable basis. And it looks like they can, but what GEON and Unilever really needed was consulting support to refine the financial model and develop a robust business plan for GEON to go on and access scale capital. So we put an incredibly excited EY team full-time with GEON for 8 weeks to help them do this. And we're now waiting to see how their fundraising efforts progress. And to me, that's a great example of that shared value model that we're trying to drive. And so quickly, before I wrap up, I wanted to also just quickly share more about the journey to scale for our impact entrepreneurship practice at EY, because the business case, which is that shared value model that I talked about, was really important in securing initial upfront investment. But the alignment to our wider firm-wide corporate strategy has also been really important in securing kind of ongoing buy-in to continue to create and scale our impact and get that buy-in right from the top of our organization. And my team has been very lucky because we were able to ride a wave when 2 years ago, our global chairman and CEO announced a new corporate strategy for EY to create long-term value for our clients, for our people, for society and the planet. And through this new corporate strategy, our global executive, which is our global board, now measure a holistic set of performance targets and KPIs, which span financial value, client value, people value, but also social and environmental value. And the key social value target that our global executive defined is to positively impact 1 billion lives by 2030, which is pretty big. That's a seventh of the world. And a new program, EY Ripples, was established, which reports direct to our global executive to bring together the global EY network, which includes all regions, all service lines, and all functions to achieve that ambition. And because of the strength of the business case that we'd built, and also a big chunk of being in the right place at the right time, our impact entrepreneurship practice is now one of the 3 key focus areas for EY Ripples globally. And that's one of the reasons that we've really been able to kind of scale this up. So I'll stop there, but hopefully that gives you some good context for what I do and our organizational journey at EY.
Thank you so much, Jessie, for sharing that. And we'll come back to have more questions with you. We'll talk briefly about Accenture development partnerships. So it would be nice also to talk in general about how I think this is a trend in more and more consulting firms to try to engage more with society and to turn it into practices as well. So can I invite Katya now, who's CFO at ZeroAvia, and share about her work. Thank you, Katya, for making your way. You're muted still.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm unmuted. I'm just sharing my screen. Just a second. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. So thanks for having me. Also echo how impressed I am with the Friday night session. So well done to making it, and hopefully we can answer some of your burning questions about what to do next after your program. As Jessie also mentioned earlier in the introduction, I was an INSEAD 15J, so it's been almost 6 years. We were supposed to have a 5-year reunion last year, unfortunately got canceled, so we're really sad, but hoping to see each other again soon. And so I can, very much remember being in your shoes and keen to talk you through also some of my thinking and how I ended up where I am now. But wanted to first start by telling you a bit about what I do now. So I work for a company called ZeroAvia. My role with the company is CFO. I've been with the company for 2 years. So look after all things kind of finance, fundraising, investor relations, and things like that. So I'll walk you through a little bit of our journey and say a bit about how I got here as well. So at ZeroAvia, so we started we're a very mission-driven company. So we started very much with this problem statement of the fact that aviation is a big contributor to climate change already today. It's a sector that's set to grow significantly. And as a percentage of global emissions, it's set to grow even faster because there really are no solutions that are technologically and economically viable today for airlines to decarbonize. And at the same time, as I'm sure we've all read, there's a lot of pressure on the industry from people, from governments to decarbonize, to commit to net zero, to offer passengers an alternative to fly sort of a guilt-free. And so there's real pressure to do something now, because when you purchase an aircraft, typically you operate it for 30 years. So with each additional aircraft that we purchase, the lock-in effect is really significant. We at ZeroAvia are working on a hydrogen electric solution. So what we believe that's the best way, not only to decarbonize the sector, but it's actually a more efficient system long-term. So the way it works is you take hydrogen that's produced through electrolysis, that's renewable energy and water. So it's green hydrogen. It goes into an aircraft in a compressed gas form in a tank. And then while it's in the air, it's converted back into electricity using a fuel cell. And it then uses an electric motor to actually power the aircraft. So that's the high level of our solution. And specifically in our company, we're focused on what we call the powertrain, so the engine. We're not working on this whole picture. And importantly, we're not redesigning a whole new airframe. We're actually looking to repower the airframes that are already flying now by just giving them a different propulsion type. So we just kind of take the airframe as it is, take the engine that it has out and put ours in and sort of repower it that way. And we think that can deliver the same range, same size aircraft, but importantly, be lower cost and zero emission. At the moment, we're working on small aircraft. So we have a 6-seat aircraft flying, and we started to work on a 20-seat aircraft. And we've been doing that both in the UK and the US and have been making good and steady progress on our sort of technical milestones there. We have just kicked off a program to focus on a 50+ seat regional turboprop aircraft. And after that, we have big goals to go to larger and larger aircraft. But to be very honest, the technology gets a bit fuzzier once you go beyond 2030. But the important message here is that we do want to work with the whole industry, not just kind of small aircraft flying sort of short distances. So September last year, we flew the world's largest hydrogen electric aircraft, which is a pretty big milestone for us as a company, and both technically, but also I think it was quite a major sort of de-risking and value inflection point also for the work that I do, which has helped the company fundraise. We have also we were on the Zoom call with Boris Johnson last summer, which is pretty cool. So we got invited to join JetZero, which is a council of mostly corporates in the UK that are working on zero emission 100+ seat jet by 2030. It's really ambitious, and I think we're one of 2 startups involved in this initiative, and are really excited to be part of that, and really using that as an anchor to also to push some of our timelines. And then finally, a bit, this is not the result just of my work, but I'd like to say that I had a role to play in some of the numbers that you can see here. So we've been lucky to get some really generous support from a number of investors. So at the end of last year, we closed our Series A funding round, which was 21.5 million. It was co-led by Breakthrough Energy Ventures, which is the climate investing fund of Bill Gates and a number of other high net worth entrepreneurs, Ecosystem Integrity Fund, which is a smaller kind of California-based clean tech fund with participation from Amazon, Shell, Horizons Ventures, and Summa Equity, all of whom are sort of very credible investors in their own right. And that was, a really big milestone moment for us as a company. Then this year, we announced a partnership with British Airways, and they actually then joined our latest investor consortium that we announced in March, where we raised another 24.5 million to really kickstart that 50+ regional turboprop sort of aircraft development. So we're quite well funded now. We're in a cool position where we've got money for about 2 years, and really focused on growing the team. So we've gone from about 10 people and everyone doing everything about 6 months ago to now being, I think, 42 and counting. And we have plans to go to about 90 by the end of this year. So really exciting to be part of that journey. And it's been a really cool way, I think, also for me to combine all the different parts of my career into this role. I think that's actually my last slide, but maybe just a quick final story about how I got here, which is, when I got to INSEAD, I had worked in finance. So I worked in M&A, and then I worked in private equity, so very kind of financy background, for profit and more traditional sectors, nothing to do with impact. Got to a point where I was very demotivated and sort of just kind of disappointed with the world as it was, and wanted to sort of use my skill set, but towards doing something more positive and with a real mission behind it. Went to INSEAD in order to sort of learn about business more broadly, but specifically to learn about impact investing. So Jessie was a very important part of that journey. So I took his course when I was there and did actually an independent study project with him, and generally did everything I could to learn about sort of combining business and impact in some way. And I tried a few different things after I left INSEAD. I tried consulting, I then tried investing, and I've now ended up in a role where I'm in a company itself, but sort of playing a financial role. And I think for me personally, it was actually really important to try all those different hats and to figure out what impact means for me, both from a functional standpoint, as well as in terms of the sector that I want to work in and sort of what I really care about and what motivates me. So yeah, so it's been, I mean, it's always easy telling the story sort of looking back. It might sound like it makes a lot more sense to you than it did to me at the time, but sort of here I am, and yeah, really happy to share my story with you guys.
Katya, thank you so much. And I can see a lot more people trickling in. It really was, I think, a back-end mess up. I think your superstar quality, it does exist, Jessie, even on a Friday evening. So it's nice. So Jessie gave the perspective of inside a large company building an initiative with a very strong sense of mission. Katya giving the sense more from the environmental side, small venture trying to make a major dent through a business venture in the climate crisis. And then the third person we have in the panel is Lisa Wei, who's actually in the development sector, currently with the GlobalFund, but she's worked with Gavi before, and particularly given the COVID situation, a lot of work, super relevant. She was telling me about her long hours working on the COVAX initiative for over a year. So looking forward to hearing from you now, Lisa. Thanks for making time.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jessie, for having me on the panel today. Just want to make sure you guys can see my slides. Okay. Perfect. It's good to be back in the INSEAD classroom, even if it's virtual, and thanks to the students for joining tonight. I'm going to give a quick intro about my career journey and then also talk briefly about my global public health work in the past few years. So my background is pretty typical INSEAD. I'm Chinese Canadian, but I did my undergrad in the US at the University of Pennsylvania. I spent the first 6 years of my career in management consulting, first at KPMG and then at Parthenon EY, focused on M&A and emerging market strategy. And Jessie, if I knew EY was doing such cool work, maybe I would never have left in 2014. But similar to how Katya described, I had a turning point on a business trip to India where I really wanted to use my business consulting skills to make some sort of positive social impact in the world. So around 2013, I started transitioning careers over to the international development sector. So first I moved to Kenya to help pilot a student loan program there that would then be listed on Kiva for fundraising, which is this peer-to-peer micro-lending platform. I really loved the social enterprise community in Kenya and was just very inspired. I then moved to Ghana to work for the Grameen Foundation there on digital health programs, which really combined my interest in healthcare and technology. Right before INSEAD, I did a pre-MBA consultancy for a social enterprise called Bima Mobile, basically designing and launching a savings insurance product in Ghana and Uganda, leveraging mobile wallets. And then 2017, I was at INSEAD, part of the 17D class. It was a whirlwind year that you guys are all getting to go through now. I was president of Endeavor, and also co-founded INSEAD's chapter of the MBA Impact Investing Network and Training Program, or MINT for short, which Professor Jessie supported. And it was our first year in the program. We're very proud to have also ended up winning the competition at the end of the year. So that was definitely a highlight, and I'm still very interested in impact investing. After INSEAD, I wanted to dive deeper into digital/tech work with the hope of eventually bringing back some of those innovations back into the developing country context. So I decided to join McKinsey in their digital practice in London, working on digital transformation projects and digital analytics projects. And I tried to focus more on healthcare again, because that was the sector I was interested in. And after McKinsey, I moved to Geneva, and I've been exploring my passion for global public health, first at Gavi and now at the GlobalFund, where I just joined last month to lead strategy implementation as GlobalFund develops its next strategy for 2023 and beyond. And it's just a critical time in global public health right now. It's exciting and challenging time to be in this space. So I'm going to deep dive on Gavi and GlobalFund. So what are these organizations? They are two of the largest global public health funders in the world, and they're both structured as public-private partnerships. So this means they are governed by many stakeholders in the ecosystem, including donor governments like the UK or the US, et cetera, implementing governments, which are the developing countries, private foundations like the Gates Foundation, private sector players such as the big healthcare and pharma companies, civil society players and NGOs, as well as other multilateral agencies like the WHO, UNICEF, World Bank, et cetera. And both of these organizations have secretariats based in Geneva. Gavi, which is the Global Vaccines Alliance, our mission is to focus on increasing coverage and equitable use of vaccines, primarily serving low and lower middle income countries. Essentially, we provide funding for vaccine procurement for about, I think, 17 routine childhood vaccines, such as for measles and polio and other vaccines that you and I have gotten when we were younger. We fund immunization programs within countries and also health system strengthening. The GlobalFund's mission is to end the epidemics of HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. We fund about 100 countries globally for prevention, diagnostics, and treatments for these three diseases. So things like antiretroviral therapies for AIDS, insecticide-treated bed nets to prevent malaria, and TB tests and medication. So last year, when COVID-19 became a pandemic, a group of public health organizations, governments, and multilateral agencies got together and launched this Access to COVID Tools Accelerator, or ACTA, to develop vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics to ensure that no one gets left behind in the fight against COVID. We looked at lessons learned from HIV, the H1N1 pandemic, and other diseases, and it was clear that left to the market forces alone, low and lower middle income countries would inevitably not get access to the medical tools needed to fight the disease, because these products would be in limited supply, prices would be too high, there would be too many regulatory and administrative hurdles, and not to mention a lack of political will and lack of coordination to help them. So ACTA was created in the hopes of combating that and ensuring global equitable access to these very necessary healthcare tools. So there's three pillars in the ACTA. Gavi is a co-lead in the vaccine pillar, which we call COVAX. And I was part of the founding team last year as we designed and operationalized this global collaboration initiative from scratch in order to get COVID vaccines developed and then eventually distributed in 190 countries with the help of partners such as CEPI, which stands for the Coalition of Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, as well as WHO, UNICEF, World Bank, and other partners. It's, as Jessie kind of hinted, it's been the most intense and impactful year of my career, and we can talk about it more in the Q&A. The therapeutics pillar is led by Wellcome Trust, a UK public health funder, the Gates Foundation, and Unitaid. The GlobalFund is a co-lead on the diagnostics pillar along with FIND, and the goal is to deliver 500 million tests to low and lower middle income countries by middle of this year. And then lastly, the Health Systems Connector is a cross-cutting initiative. And there are a number of delivery partners involved, including the GlobalFund, and the health system partners looks at things like integrated data management, protecting frontline health workers with sufficient PPE, strengthening supply chains and clinical care. So just making sure that the overall health systems are robust enough to handle the additional burdens placed by COVID. And I'm sure all of you hailing from around the world, each of your countries are struggling with these things at the moment. So just deep diving on COVAX in particular, you might have heard about this in the media in the past year. This began as an idea early last year based on the principle that COVID doesn't respect borders, and we need to make sure that low and lower middle income countries are able to secure these COVID vaccines when they become available, and that rich countries don't monopolize the supply. So practically what this meant was designing a pooled procurement mechanism where every country in the world ideally is involved. We pool all our resources, and then we can invest in building up a portfolio of vaccine candidates globally, because remember last year, no one had any idea which vaccine would ultimately be successful. So some of that investment would be at risk. And then also very important to ramp up manufacturing capacity so that when vaccines did get regulatory approval, as the first ones did last December, they would be ready to be shipped to countries immediately. And historically, it takes about anywhere between 7 to 20 years from vaccine development to getting it to market, because each of the steps is done sequentially. But this time we've massively accelerated the process of R&D, the clinical trials, licensure, and approvals, so that we're able to get a vaccine to market in 12 to 18 months. Equitable access and fair allocation, as I mentioned, is really important, and the WHO played an important role here to design an allocation algorithm that took into account the public health context, the health system readiness in countries, and broader epidemiological patterns of the virus, including the variants, which they are still actively tracking. They also set the norms and provided guidance on the target priority vaccination populations. So the idea that healthcare workers and the elderly should get the first doses within country, and countries have subsequently followed up on that, and that's part of each country's vaccination strategy. UNICEF Supply Division has been critical in ensuring the distribution and delivery of vaccine to countries. And so far, COVAX has delivered about 59 million COVID vaccines to 122 countries. But the goal that we set late last year was to deliver 2 billion doses by the end of this year. And 59 million is nowhere near that because vaccines are still limited in supply. So there's a lot to be done ahead, including fundraising billions of dollars, scaling up manufacturing capacity, encouraging tech transfers between the developed country manufacturers and developing country manufacturers. So still lots to do ahead. I'm going to stop there because I could talk about COVAX for hours, but happy to answer any questions about my career and how to get into this sector as an MBA.
Thank you so much. I'm actually going to just ask one question of the three of you, and I'm just sharing the screen again just to remind who the three people are, because many of the people dialed in late. But just to know, we have these three wonderful panelists. So the open question that I want to ask, and Jessie, if you don't mind, I'll have you go again first, because I think a lot of people missed your part since you went first. Based on your experience of pursuing an impact career in the context of consulting, and consulting is very often a career path that a lot of the people at INSEAD choose. What would you advise? Because very often they are looking, I mean, consulting is a natural thing that comes up. And of course, the stories they always hear at recruiting time is, yes, you can have huge impact. How should people think about this temptation in general to join consulting business? And your particular division, of course, is in a way a win-win anyway. But even if you have to give general advice on people saying, hey, let's build some general skills versus, oh, I want to go specifically into impact, in the context of consulting, but more broadly also, what would be your advice to MBAs? And then it's the same question that I would pass on to Katya and Lisa as well, that in general, this word impact is such a confusing word because it's such a diverse space. If somebody wants to pursue impact careers, if you have to sort of condense your advice to a minute or two, what would that be? And let's do that one round of answers, max 1-2 minutes each, and then I want to give the students some time to ask questions.
Sure, thanks, Jasdeep. So I have the tough job of going first, but I guess so. As some context to my career prior to doing this, so I've been at EY my whole career. I've been at all different parts of our business. I'm a chartered accountant by trade. I started in our strategy and transactions practice, or our corporate finance practice. I worked in our commercial consulting practice for many years, my experience, was not dissimilar to Lisa's. I think my personal view is that consulting is almost like an applied MBA experience, in the sense of you build skills so quickly working with so many different sectors on so many different projects, that I personally found that as the first step in my career hugely valuable, just to get that breadth of different sectors and understand in practice both the value of business and the challenges of business. And that led me to a point where I knew that I had skills and experiences that I had built in that consulting career that could be hugely valuable if I could apply them to tackling the world's kind of greatest social and development challenges. I, similar to Lisa, have to admit, I did look elsewhere as well. But what I realized in my career was that actually, if you work for a large corporation, and this includes consulting organizations, but it really also includes corporations in general, these organizations have such power and such scale, and they are so far reaching. I mean, we're a over $34 billion business. We have 300,000 employees. We operate across 150 countries. If the people within that organization can even change that organization to be slightly more impactful, then that has the potential to really move the needle. And so for me personally, I realized that because I had built up a point, I was a senior manager by that point 5 years ago in our commercial consulting practice. I built up to a point where I had networks, I had client networks, I had internal networks, and I had the expertise that I felt that the best thing I could do, the most impactful thing I could do in my career, was actually find a way to actually make EY more impactful as an organization. Yeah. And so that's what I've committed my career to.
So Antoine is on the call.
Francesca, do you mind muting? Thank you. Jessie?
And so I guess, yeah, and just to kind of close out, I think in terms of advice, my advice to people would be, do look at careers in consulting, because I do think that it's a fantastic opportunity to kind of develop that base skill set. But wherever you are, I would also say, whatever organization you go to, look for ways to encourage and influence that organization that you are part of to be more impactful as an organization itself.
Thank you, Jessie. And Katya, to the same question, I think we were having a slightly different point of view from you, because you were coming in with clearer goals already into the MBA. So do you mind sharing your experience on that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think for me, I've been on a bit of a journey to figure out what impact means for me. When I left what I was doing in private equity to go to INSEAD, it was because I really wanted to switch into a career that was impact first. That was really important to me. I realized that as a person, I was no longer motivated by incremental efficiency gains at some large company buying another. It just wasn't doing it for me. So for me, it was really important to find something that exists first and foremost to make the world a better place in some way. And I didn't want to compromise on that. And when I came close to accepting jobs that weren't like that, I realized that I was just going to set myself up for disappointment and frustration. But it was difficult because, you know, I spent a lot of money on the course, and it was kind of, you can sort of rationalize a lot of decisions when you're in that position towards the end and you get attractive offers. So I would say, like, one thing is, it is a personal kind of values judgment, but you have to know yourself. You have to know what motivates you, and you don't know that necessarily straight away. Sometimes you need to test that a little bit in different scenarios, but I think it's really important to know what kind of your North Star is, your guiding light, your value system, and listen to that and hone that and refine that over time, and don't compromise on it, because it's I think that's one of the most important things we have as people. The other thing I would say is, like, lead with your strengths. So I think I tried to sort of shove myself into roles where I didn't have like a clear differentiation. And one really good piece of advice I got, which is what I'm sharing now, is sort of, you know, don't try to be something you're not, but actually figure out what is unique about you, what is strong about your experience, but be it, I don't know, geography or a certain sector or a certain skill set. Like, when are you in the zone? When are you in the flow? What really gets you going? And try to use that as an anchor and as a kind of a filter to how you look at different opportunities around you. And this, I mean, this goes beyond impact, but I think it's particularly relevant in impact careers as well.
Thank you so much. Lisa, briefly for a minute, big picture career advice, and then I should give some time for student questions.
Yeah, of course. I think Jessie and Katya already said a lot of the key things I wanted to mention as well. I mean, I have been more of a, let's say, career hopper. I've spent the past 7 years experimenting with different roles and exploring where I could fit in different parts of the, let's say, social impact value chain. So joining an NGO out of consulting, thinking, oh, this, you know, being in the field is where I could have the most impact. But I found a lot of frustrating dynamics between grantees and donors, and then thought I should try social enterprises because it combines business-oriented business models and social impact. And then now I'm on the donor side of actually funding some of these implementing partners on the ground and countries. And I would say don't get too hung up. I know a lot of MBAs on, you know, the very first job that you get right out of your MBA. It's not going to be your lifelong job. Most of my classmates, you know, end up switching jobs after a year or two after that. But like Katya said, just remembering what your own North Star is, and, you know, the consulting skill set. I get asked this a lot, having done a lot of consulting myself. It's very transferable, and I've had chats with a lot of MBAs in the past few years or so, and I've found that those who didn't have any consulting experience in the past had a somewhat tougher time breaking into social impact directly after the MBA. It's definitely not impossible. I think it's about demonstrating how your prior work experience is transferable to the new organization that you want to join, whether it's a nonprofit or a social enterprise, impact investing, or some sort of large international org. But yeah, just being true to yourself, even if you end up in consulting, you know, remember, are you there to make partner, or are you there to, you know, network with the partners who are doing the kind of work you want to do, building your consulting toolkit, learning as much as you can about a certain sector, and then eventually leaving to pursue your own thing. And so if you use whatever post-MBA or post-MIM job you get as a stepping stone to get you closer to your goal, I think that can only help you. So
I mean, a common thread that I see among all three very valuable pieces of advice is you have to remember what you're trying to achieve. So on the one hand, there are some opportunities that might not perfectly align, but as long as you remain sensitive on what's unique about you in terms of your skills as well as where you're headed, you can use these as platforms to open up different kinds of doors. But there's always some degree of customization in finding paths in, you know, impact, because these are sort of new kinds of territories with very diverse opportunities, as we see, you know, the three of you working in such different ways. And it's not obvious that I could plug one of you and put you in the other spot and you wouldn't necessarily be equally happy there. You sort of found your own homes and your own path. So congratulations on your great work. I'm going to stop the recording now.